All right. Hi, everyone. This is Kerim Baran with SolarAcademy. I am here today with Billy Christie of Trina Solar. Billy is Director of Engineering at Trina. We're both joining the show today from San Diego, sunny San Diego, and we will talk about Trina, which is one of the main, largest, oldest solar module manufacturers in the world. But before we get into Trina and its latest technology innovations, especially as it relates to extreme weather conditions and resilience related products, is really what we're going to talk about. I want to talk a little bit about Billy's background as well. So, Billy, with that, can you tell us a little bit about how you found yourself here in San Diego working for Trina? Maybe we start earlier on in your career or education
Yeah,
and what brought you.
for sure. Yeah, thanks for having me, Kareem. I actually grew up in New York, so out on Long Island. Went to school in upstate New York, state school called
Yeah,
SUNY Binghamton.
yeah,
It was a
I
great
noticed that on
school.
your LinkedIn. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
great school, but very cold and snowy and
Yeah.
rainy and miserable. So
Right.
after I graduated there, I moved out to San Diego, and so that was a nice change of pace. So
Hmm.
I actually got my first job in solar while I was driving across the country. My car broke down in Colorado. It was around Thanksgiving time. I was calling
Hmm.
all around trying to find a job. Someone asked if I could be in San Diego again for after Thanksgiving. They thought I lived there already. I, in fact, did not, but I said, yeah, I'll be there. And so got started with Solar City at that point. So, for those who don't know, Solar City was kind of a big national player, mostly in
Uh,
residential solar, but also some CNI back in the
yeah,
day. So that was kind
one
of
of
my
the
start.
earliest,
Yep,
biggest players in residential solar, along with Sunrun and some others. Yeah,
definitely.
started by Elon, run by his cousins, had
Yep,
his ups and downs. Eventually,
yep,
folded under Tesla, but yeah, it definitely did a lot of good things.
for
Yeah.
sure. So yeah, I started there as a residential PV designer, which was a great way to kind of get my foot in the industry and meet a ton of people. Still very good friends with a lot of the people I worked with here in San Diego at Solar City. And so yeah, I started there as a residential PV designer. My boss eventually became a structural engineer. He got promoted kind of along that track. And so there was an opening for a manager in the Resi PV space in San Diego, and I was selected for that. So yeah, about a year in, I was managing other residential designers. And again, it was kind of a great way to just see how the projects go from origination all the way to construction and dealing with issues after construction and whatnot. All of that kind of came by my desks, which was a good experience. But like you said, the company had some ups and downs. Solar in general does, and certainly
Mhm.
residential solar. So eventually, those were not the most fun to deal with. And I also just kind of wanted to move to the next best thing, which I saw as commercial solar. I kind of wanted to work on larger projects, different projects. The residential projects back then got a little cookie cutter eventually, and
Yeah.
you're doing 10 designs a day. They all look very similar, and just kind of wanted to see something else. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think I was at Solar City for around 2.5, maybe 3 years, and then moved to a company called Borrego Solar. They're based here in San Diego, but also had a really large presence on the East Coast in Massachusetts, and also an office up in the Bay Area in Oakland. They were a EPC business, so engineering, procurement, construction. They also had a development arm, and then eventually built out an O&M arm. And so kind of did everything in the CNI and eventually kind of small scale utility space. So started there as a project engineer and followed a similar path. The company grew a bunch. They needed kind of someone to step into a leadership position for project engineers. I filled that and then kind of just grew with the company. We brought in some in-house designers, professional engineers, some interconnection specialists, and I kind of managed all those for the West Coast of in the western half of the U.S. So really good experience there too. The project engineering role I started in, we took the projects from contract all the way till PTO, and so saw everything that was involved between those two phases. And yeah, it was a great way to kind of learn about permitting, construction, RFIs, dealing with issues in the field, permitting again, big nightmare, and dealt with a lot of that. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it really kind of gave me good insight into the CNI and small scale utility side of the industry. But yeah, eventually Borrego stopped performing EPC work. COVID was kind of tough on supply chain and just tough on EPCs in general. And so they shut down back in, I want to say 2022, end of 2022. And so I was looking for new opportunities, and that's when I moved over to Trina. So what I thought would work really well, and what has worked really well, is bringing my past experience to a module manufacturer,
Yeah.
because I was essentially working for what was a customer of these module manufacturers. And so
Yeah.
bringing my point of view and my experience, kind of being the voice of the customer within Trina, has worked really well. So yeah, what I do
Nice.
at Trina, I kind of work on two distinct separate sides of the business right now that we're eventually merging towards kind of one package solution. So we'll talk about that near the end of this conversation. But on the module
Mhm.
side, which is certainly our bread and butter and what we're known for, I manage the US based product management team. And so it's a lot of sales support, it's getting the products certified as they kind of are developed. It's a lot of testing with third party agencies, which we'll talk about. And kind of just being the technical experts within Trina to support our customers when we're selling products or after they're sold and folks are installing them. So that's kind of it on the
Mhm.
module side. I also am kind of rearing up a tracker division here at Trina. Again, we'll talk about this a little more near the end, but Trina's long-term goal is to be able to provide a kind of complete solution for our customers, so they don't have to go
Yeah.
to a bunch of different customers to get, or different companies to get all the different parts of their projects. We obviously have the modules already. We have a tracker product that's been being installed across the world for quite a while now. And we have a relatively new storage product as well. And so on the tracker side, I manage a team of pre-sales engineers, product managers, and project managers that take the project from early stages, do all the initial design and layout, handle the quoting, take the project through contracting,
Yeah.
and then support the kind of logistics of getting the material to site and helping our EPC customers and developer customers build and install these projects. So
Yeah.
yeah, kind of see both parts of the business, and it's been great. Really enjoyed
Right.
it thus far.
Thanks. Thank you very much for that background. So let me dive into one of our main topics today, which is essentially these new resilient PV modules that Trina is putting out in the market. And for viewers' benefit, there's actually a ebook that we're going to refer to in this conversation, which is an ebook put out by Trina, downloadable on their website. If you just Google Trina Solar Environments ebook, you will find it easily. Essentially, this is a new module that is hail resistant, and so can you tell us a little bit about like the story behind this, really, like
Yeah,
how it came, like what was the customer problem issues you guys were facing, and why innovate like this,
for
hail
sure.
resistant?
Yeah, so I would here at Trina, we have a really strong market intelligence team who essentially looks at kind of the upcoming growth of the industry and where that growth will occur in the United States. And
Mhm.
so what we saw is essentially a lot of the future growth of utility scale solar in particular in the US is expected to be in the Texas area and some surrounding states as well. And that's great. But a negative of that is that Texas and kind of that corridor from Texas north is one of the kind of most intense hail locations in the entire world. So
Right.
that's kind of a new problem that modules, standard modules are 2 millimeter glass, 2 millimeter glass on the back, and they are somewhat hail resistant. There is an IEC standard that modules have been held to for quite a while now that require hail resistance up to, I think, 25 millimeters. It's in the ebook, so you can check. But
Mhm.
that's pretty minimal.
Yeah.
And with the climate changing over time as it does, hail events are getting more frequent, and they're also getting more intense, and the size of those hailstones are increasing. And so
Yeah.
we knew there was going to be a lot of growth in the utility sector in this kind of hail intense area, and we wanted to make sure we had a product that was able to withstand that hail.
Right.
Kind of another reason that's really important is modules themselves are very reliable at this point. Trina modules certainly, but across the industry, modules do a pretty good job of being reliable across their lifetime of 25 years. But
Wow.
if you have a, intense weather event such as a hail event, suddenly they can become not reliable. And we've got stats in the ebook. I
Yeah.
think,
So I was really impressed by those. I mean, impressed or shocked. I don't know what's
yeah,
the right word, but 2% of insurance claims by volume are hail events, but 50% of the dollar losses are hail events also. So that is
right,
really incredible. So hails are really what most insurance companies are dealing with in terms of covering
right.
solar
And I would
assets.
say, that's so yeah, kind of a small volume of claims, but a large dollar amount per claim.
Yeah.
The events tend to be pretty catastrophic. And so that's obviously bad if you're a project owner, but it's also pretty bad for the industry because I've seen on like Twitter not long ago, like pictures of a hail site or a solar site that was impacted by hail. And suddenly all the modules are torn up. The racking is all over the place. It looks really bad. And it's not a great look for the industry, which is,
Yeah.
a green, sustainable industry to have all this material that now needs to be cleaned out. Recycling of PV modules is still kind of a burgeoning industry, and so the recyclability isn't as high as we want it to be in the near future. And so a lot of that material ends up in landfills, which is certainly counter to what we're trying to do. So, and those stats are kind of historical, and that's before the kind of intense growth that we expect in these hail-rich
Yeah.
areas. So likely to get worse. So
So
yeah.
what's the solution? Is it essentially increasing the glass width on the front side and making a stronger glass, like a bulletproof glass or whatever the equivalent of that is? And just to kind of like put this in perspective for most viewers' benefit, I mean, solar panels, they do, I've done some solar utility scale solar development in my past, and we used to plan, 0.5% or 0.5% degradation per year over the 20, 25 years of lifetime that you project for these
Mhm.
systems, which generally, I mean, talking to some really old, decades old solar people, they all say panels will last 40 years, even 50 years at maybe 70 or 80% efficiency from 40 years ago. And that's
Mhm.
generally the case. You lose maybe 0.5% or even less these days on a year basis in terms of the capacity of that system.
Mhm.
And used to be 80% warranties, now 90% warranties 20 years into the asset life or 25 years. So everybody expects to lose some efficiency of that production capacity, 10% or whatnot. And this ebook refers to 5 out of 10,000 faulty panels too, which is really, if you add up over 25 years, only 1.25%, which is very little compared to the 10% or so degradation that could happen. So these are
Yep.
all like normal little inefficiencies that you see through the life of a solar asset. But obviously, when a hail comes, it can rip apart the entire system or just damage all the panels. And
Right.
you're losing 90% or 100% of the asset. So what is the way to mitigate that, I guess, is the
Yep.
question.
Yeah. So, like you're saying, we've gotten really good at manufacturing modules at this point, Trina and others, to the
Yeah.
point that they are reliable and they will perform as long as they're not crashed into by a giant ice ball and broken apart. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, the way we mitigate it, we looked at a couple different options, and there are a couple different options across the industry as well. But the end of the day, you are increasing the thickness of the glass essentially to make it less susceptible to breakage and damage from hail. And so our core product is the NE19. We'll show a slide on that a little later, but
I'll
our
pull that up.
standard dual glass modules have 2 millimeter front glass and then 2 millimeter glass in the back. And the NE19, the hail resistant module, is 3.2 millimeter front glass with just a back sheet in the back. So it's not dual glass on the front, back sheet on the back.
This
Um,
one, the one in the middle we're talking about.
Correct. It's
Oh,
the one
yeah.
kind of on the right of those middle two,
Yeah.
NE19
Yeah.
RC there. So it's very
Yeah.
similar to our NEG19 RC. The cell, most of the BOM, the encapsulant, the frame is all very similar,
Mhm.
the same essentially. It's really just the thickness of the glass that changes that gives it its hail reliability. So it's
Got it.
not a major change, but it's important in terms of dealing with
So how much thicker is that glass versus the regular product?
Yep. So the NEG19 on the left of those two there has 2
Yeah.
millimeter front glass and 2 millimeter back glass. And then
Yeah.
the NE19RC on the right there, the hail resistant, that has 3.2 millimeter front glass and no glass on the back. So the
Got
reason
it.
we did that, other companies are also doing, they're looking at 2.5 millimeter front glass and 2.5 millimeter back glass. So
Mm,
thickening both the front and the back. We preferred the 3.2 and clear backsheet because if you look at the overall weight of the module, we wanted to beef this thing up without making it difficult to
too much.
install, difficult to ship,
Right.
increasing
Got
costs
it.
in that way. And so the 3.2 millimeter and then the backsheet is actually less overall glass than 2 millimeter, 2 millimeter. And so it keeps the cost or the weight down, which makes it easier to install, easier to ship, et cetera. And so that was kind of our solution as opposed to the 2.5, 2.5, which increases the front glass less thick, like makes it less thicker, so less resistant to hail, and then also kind of increases the overall weight of the module quite a bit. So
Oh, great. Thanks for all that info. One other topic I want to touch on this topic of hail and resistance is how do you guys test this product? Like I'm going through the ebook, it seems like a quite intensive process to of testing that you guys go through as well to make sure these products are truly hail resistant. So can you tell us a little bit about that testing process and then maybe the
yeah,
results?
yeah, for sure. So we obviously do a lot of testing internally, but when we're selling to customers and the industry at large, you need third-party backing, obviously, on your results so that they're more trustworthy, et cetera. And so there's kind of two main agencies that we test with. One is PVEL and one is RETC. And so they have kind of set different testing protocols. PVEL's it's very similar to the IEC standard I referenced earlier, which, the IEC standard is up to 25 millimeter hail thickness. The PVEL testing goes up to 55, I believe, maybe even 65 millimeters at this point. But the
Yeah.
way they do testing is essentially you have a module here and you're impacting it with hail perpendicularly. So
So do you
at a
like
right
throw
angle.
a do you like throw a like a bullet as if like you're shooting a not a bullet but a ice ball into the panel? Is that
Yeah,
essentially?
basically exactly that. And the P-val method is again direct on. So I get 90-degree incident angle
Yeah,
directly against the module. And I believe
yeah,
it's 7 different locations around the module. So you'll do that with the different thicknesses of hailstones. And you'll essentially see what thickness the module will stand up against
yeah.
and kind of go up in thickness. So you'll start with 25 millimeters, 35 millimeters, 40, essentially up to its failure point. So
And what's the speed you throw the ball at? Is it the same as speed as it would get with gravity, I guess?
I don't know it offhand. It'll be in the ebook,
Yeah,
but it's essentially you're looking at the overall energy impacting the module. So it's kind of the thickness and the speed together, and you're seeing that
yeah,
the module can withstand that. But it's relatively fast. And if you get up to like 55, 65 millimeter hail balls, that's like the size of a billiard ball. That
yeah.
could do a lot of damage. But
Right.
if you look at the testing on the ebook, you can pull that up, and the kind of dual glass, or sorry, the 3.2 millimeter glass
Yeah,
modules are quite a
that
bit
is.
more kind of able to withstand hail than the standard 2.2 millimeter modules.
Right. So these are like essentially 65 millimeter hail resistant.
Correct. Correct.
Mm,
But you see the stow angle on there, and so that kind of
right.
brings in the another kind of
Yeah.
uh, part of the
Yeah, that's the
testing.
other, I guess, mitigation method that asset owners use to protect their asset is they can if they have vertical even single axis trackers, I guess would be enough for that, is
Mhm.
they turn the panels vertical when the hail is coming down, and then that
Correct.
obviously can.
So yeah, trackers have different stow angles, and
Yeah,
those have been around forever. They're used for wind stow. If you want to get snow off the modules, you take them as
yeah,
close to vertical as possible and dump the snow off. And
right.
now stow angle is pretty important for hail as well. And so trackers Historically,
But
I believe
sometimes hail comes down like without much warning, and it can happen like in just a few minutes. Are
absolutely.
they smart enough to notice that and turn vertical on their own? Is there that
Some of them are
intelligence?
getting towards that. Right now, the industry standard is not necessarily automated on the hail side. And so, what
Mhm.
you would have to do is called a manual stow. So, you would
Yeah.
be looking at kind of weather data. And if you think a hail event is coming, you would manually stow at the kind of max angle that your tracker will allow. And
And you can do
different
that obviously remotely, right?
remotely, correct? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, got it.
So different trackers have different maximum snow angles. For a while, the industry standard was 60, but
Hmm.
with the rise of hail, similar to how we're developing these hail-resistant modules, tracker manufacturers are kind of increasing the maximum angle of their stow in order to kind of be more
Yeah,
reliable
like more
against
like
it.
75, something
I,
like
I
that.
believe 75, at RE Plus, I think one of the companies mentioned something like 77. So it was going
Oh,
from
wow.
75 to
Um,
77. And it's very
oh,
important. So
yeah,
that
yeah, that th those few degrees can make a big difference. And
for sure.
clearly the other badly needed intelligence or AI or software capabilities to notice that hail is happening, so you
Yep.
activate a stow really fast because that can save millions or hundreds of millions of dollars for the industry and
Correct.
companies.
I'll talk a little bit about that in a second, but speaking
Yeah.
of stow angle, that kind of bridges nicely to the other testing agency we work with, which is called RETC. And
Mm-hmm.
their testing protocol is different from PVEL in the way that they can control the impact angle of the hail against the glass. And so we're able to test at, say, 60-degree impact angle,
Got it.
55, 40, et
Got it.
cetera. And so that's
Yeah.
why when you look at that kind of section of
Table.
testing results on
Yeah.
the ebook, it has 65 at, I believe,
Right.
60-degree tilt. So yeah, we kind of work with both agencies. They have two different protocols, but they're both very robust and very useful information.
Yeah. I think we were talking about this just we start before we started the recording, but Trina has put in 200 gigawatts of solar panels and more. That was right. Yeah,
Yep.
in your which we will show the slide deck. So I mean that's like I think there's 2,000 gigawatts of solar assets on the ground right now in the world, plus or minus. That is 2 terawatts, believe it or not. And Trina has put in almost a tenth of that. So obviously, you guys are leading the charge in module quality, production, efficiency. So these hail testing and the results you're getting are impressive. But there are also other extreme conditions that obviously your customers are thinking about. Can you touch a little bit on what those are and how how you think about them and what are some key things to look at as a developer, as an asset
Yeah.
builder
Yeah, for
to
sure.
think about?
So high wind zones are kind of an important thing as well. There's tornadoes, southern Florida. The winds get quite high from hurricanes fairly
Yeah.
often, unfortunately. And so
Hmm.
that's a big thing. Our PVEL, so PVEL is a testing agency that they do hail testing, but they also do a lot of other testing. They have what's called a PQP, product qualification program, which is essentially a gamut of tests that most modules are run through. All of our modules are run through this program. And so part of that is a dynamic load testing. And this is particularly important for testing our modules resilience to wind speed. And so we make sure all our modules pass kind of the PVEL protocols there, and that ensures that kind of they're able to withstand these high wind areas. But part of it is it's not really just the module; it's what you're installing the module on, and so it's really important for module manufacturers to work closely with racking manufacturers across the country to make sure we have a good sense of where we can install our modules, what wind speeds will be successful in with all these different products. So part of what my team does is we'll work with any of the racking manufacturers, but especially the kind of larger market share racking manufacturers across the country and both rooftop and tracker spaces. And so it's really important that the module needs to be able to withstand the wind, but the module and its connection to the structure that it's being
Yeah.
built on needs to be able to withstand the wind as well. And so that kind of takes work between the two parties. We do dynamic load testing on the racking that a project will be installed on, and in that way, we're able to understand the design pressures or the wind pressures, snow pressures, etc., that a module are going to be able to withstand with that kind of combination of module and racking.
And that partially also probably explains why you guys are getting in the tracker space, because it's really important to have those two separate manufacturing companies' products be compatible with each other in a really tight way, especially in hurricane prone areas.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, kind of the long-term vision is Trina wants to be able to provide the full solution for our customers. You know, you can think of it like if you're going to buy a laptop, you go and you buy a laptop. You don't buy a
Yeah.
screen and a keyboard and all these
Right.
different parts and put it all together. You want to go
Yeah.
out and buy the thing and be able
Yeah.
to use it. And so that's
Yeah.
kind of the vision Trina has. We've got the modules. We're obviously well known for that, bread and butter.
Right.
As you said, kind of industry leader for quite a while now, and we've deployed a lot of modules. And then on the tracker side, we've actually had a tracker product for quite a while, have had a good amount of success in Latin America, Europe, internationally, but less so in the States thus far. And so
Yeah.
that's kind of part of the team I'm growing, is to increase our market share here in the US. And we also have a storage product. So again, the long-term mission is our customers come to us, we're able to provide all those products. They all work seamlessly together. And then there's benefits to the customer on the logistics side. They're only dealing with one company for contracting, any O&M issues, they come to us. You're not having to kind of look at a racking manufacturer and then a module manufacturer, and they might be pointing fingers at each other like, oh no, the problem's on their end. So it's kind of one neck to choke essentially, which I think is beneficial for
Yeah.
customers.
Yeah, thanks for that background. With that, I would like to pull up a set of slides you shared with me prior to the call to talk a little bit more about the company, or Trina as one of the leading manufacturers in the space, and also some of the things that are in the near future that are exciting and happening for in the U.S. market and beyond. So with
Sweet.
that, I'm gonna just pull up these slides you shared with me. Yeah, I mean, I've always, yeah. So this is these are the, I guess, the high level key points about the company. I did not know Trina started in 1997. I mean, when I entered the industry in 2009, I remember Trina being one of the top players. And my partner at SolarAcademy, Nico Johnson, and his podcast, Suncast, talks about Trina. I do remember Nico was working for Trina at the time, which
Yeah.
was a big deal. And yeah, this is where the number 200 gigawatts of modules has been sold through Trina over its
Yeah.
lifetime.
So
That is
yeah,
incredible.
we've definitely been around for a long time, and I can take very little credit for any of those 200 gigawatts. I haven't been with Trina for that long, but it is super interesting when I go to RE Plus or other shows. There's so many people that'll come by and have worked for Trina in the past, because we have been around for so long and successful for that period as well. And so it's cool in that way. And yeah, I mean, Trina's an international company, but I think something that maybe differentiates us from some of the other players is we do have a really strong U.S. presence, and
Mhm.
I think it's up to 150 plus, as shown here. It's probably
Yeah,
more than that now. This slide was put together right after our ASM, which was our annual sales meeting. It was done in Dallas. On the next slide, we'll see why it was in Dallas, but that picture
yeah,
below there has all the people that work here
right.
at Trina in the U.S. And that's
And so
important
where
because
are the key places of operation for the company right now? Is it
yeah.
mostly in Texas and some on the coast?
Yeah, so we have our headquarters in the U.S. is in Fremont, California. So we've got an office
Okay.
up there, and then we have warehouses kind of scattered across the country. We've got one in Houston, I believe one in Long Beach,
Mhm.
elsewhere, essentially to house the
Yeah,
modules and then ship them from. And
right.
then yes, there's a manufacturing hub we're building out in Wilmer, Texas, which
Yeah,
is near
which is
Dallas.
well. Yeah. So yeah, let's jump to that. Just trying to see if there's any other
Well, yeah, the one
yeah.
thing I would maybe highlight here again is the U.S. presence, and part of the reason that's beneficial kind of this plays really nicely with what we talked about earlier. We talked about Texas and that corridor north of it being a big area for hail. that it's actually one of the biggest in the world. And so if you're a
Right.
company, based internationally and you're just selling modules into the US, you might not have the foresight to understand, oh, there's a lot of growth happening in this area. This is a big hail area. We need to deal with that. So I think
Yeah.
our presence here in the US and kind of having product managers on the ground, working really closely with customers and understanding their needs
Yeah.
is a big benefit to us, and kind of lets us, stay on top of the industry and help it grow as it moves into new areas and deals with new challenges.
So Fremont, California, you said, right, for the headquarters in the
Yeah.
US, and but obviously Texas will become a big center of operation as well with this new manufacturing facility. So let's talk a little bit about this, but I guess I'm uh, I'm trying to remember like the size of Trina's annual production capacity. It's obviously in the
Yeah, I don't have it
billions,
offhand. I
but it,
believe module. So we have kind of different
module
capacity
cell, yeah,
depending
yeah,
where the modules are going. Like our US capacity is different than our international capacity, obviously.
sure, yeah,
And historically, for the past good amount of years now, all our modules are coming from Southeast Asia. So we have
yeah,
factories in Vietnam and Thailand.
right,
And I believe the capacity roughly, I would say around 10 gigawatts. I don't know that completely
yeah,
offhand. I should. But yes,
yeah.
this factory in Wilmer will be 5 gigawatts, which is a good amount of
Huge. That's a
capacity.
huge addition. Wow. And
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, these numbers are impressive. Like you guys are basically investing close to $250 million to improve this existing facility in Texas and also add equipment into the factory essentially. And it will employ, 1,200 plus jobs in the area, ship 12,000 shipping containers worth of goods. It's really impressive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really cool. And we went down there as a team last October. Wilmer, if you don't know where that is, I didn't until
Yeah.
we started building there.
I
It's
I
about
was
20 minutes south of Dallas. So
yeah,
that
yeah,
was the reason we were in Dallas for the ASM. We took kind of the whole team down there just to see the site, and it's
yeah.
by far the largest building I've ever been in. It's crazy. So it
Yeah,
was really
that's
cool to
where it
see.
is. Yeah,
Yeah.
cool. All right.
And
Yeah,
yeah, that proximity to Dallas is important because, like you said, it's going to employ a good amount of people, and we need
yeah,
skilled labor in that area. And so, Dallas, obviously, a big hub and has a good amount of universities around there. So, we kind of plan to source from there as much as possible and have a strong workforce.
yeah. Makes sense. And also really impressive that it's gonna create payroll of $80 million for the region. That is a good thing as well. So as we come towards the end of our conversation, any other points that we should highlight, Billy?
I don't know. I think we did a pretty good job of
Covering
covering
the
most things here. Maybe if you want to pull up the product portfolio real quick, we can talk through
yeah,
that. We obviously
yeah,
talked about the Hail modules, but we've got some other great
yeah.
modules
Let's
as well.
talk a little bit about these residential products too, maybe, and
Yep.
smaller.
Yeah. So our current product is the NEO9 RC point oh 0.05. That's made overseas currently. In the
Hmm.
future, we plan to assemble the NEO9 RH point oh 0.05, the module to the right
Hmm.
there,
This one, yep.
here in the US at Wilmer.
Mhm.
The residential industry in particular is really, it's very beneficial to have US made products. Customers want a product on their home that looks good, they can feel good about. And so having that locally made product is really important to them. So we're really excited about that.
What's the difference between this premium version of the 430-watt product versus the other one?
So the similar to the hail resistant module, that premium version has thicker glass as well. And so
Okay.
that's
So the
very,
same
that's
thing applies for homes, essentially.
basically, I mean, hail is going to impact homes as well, and so you do want the
Sure.
thicker glass. But there's also
Yeah.
other things. I was out at RE Plus, and someone I worked with previously was telling me how they had modules on the roof, and some kid threw a rock at it, so it
Right.
damaged it.
Sure.
Also,
Yeah.
there's a lot of modules installed near golf courses, so
Yeah.
there's various things like that. The other benefit, though, is that the thicker glass allows it to have kind of higher downward pressure forces and uplift pressure forces on it. And that's beneficial,
Mhm.
like we talked about, for dealing with wind. So this
Yeah.
module will be more successful in southeastern Florida as well.
I'm not expecting you to know the answer to this, but I'm just wondering, like price wise, is it How much more expensive is this just for the panel? Like, is it 5-10% more expensive, or is it 20-30% more expensive?
Lower than you would think, and in some cases at parity, because again, like
Oh,
if,
because you
if you
you
look at
don't
the
do the back.
NE19
Yeah.
versus the NEG19 RC, it's 4 millimeters total of glass for the existing 2 millimeter, two
Right.
millimeter, and we're going down to 3.2 millimeters total of glass. So
Yeah.
again, the components inside are very similar, and so
Right.
it's really not a huge price difference. It's just having the product you want for the area you're in.
Got it. Cool. And anything else we should mention about the commercial size panels or
Yeah, we can maybe,
utility?
so the commercial panels, NEG19RC, that's been kind of our bread and butter. It's used in both commercial and utility
Yeah.
currently. And
This the
so,
620-watt panel, basically,
yeah,
on here. Yeah.
yeah. So we've had a lot of success with that one. And again, our hail resistant module is essentially the same
Yeah.
innards, the same components with thicker glass. So we expect to have a lot of success with that as well in the hail regions. And then the utility modules, so we have an older kind of P-type module, which is that
Right.
DEG21C. But
Yeah.
coming out next year, we're really excited about the one all the way to the right, that NEG21C 0.20.
Hmm.
Very high power, very high efficiency, TopCon N-type module. And we talked about P-Vals testing before and the PQP testing. Every year they put out kind of a top performers list. You know, all these different
Yeah.
modules are going through this gamut of testing, and they
Yeah.
have top performers in all the different categories of testing they do. And the NEG21C was a top performer across all the testing categories, which I think only either 3 or 4 other modules can say kind of met that category or
Wow.
that criteria across thousands of modules tested. So really
Are, are
excited.
the dimen are the dimensions of the 720-watt panel the same as 665-watt panel?
They are, yeah. So they're both using that G12 size cell.
Yeah.
And if you look at the left there, the G12 is 210 millimeter by 210
Yeah.
millimeter
Yeah.
versus the
These are.
G12R, which is
Yeah.
210 by 182. And so both of the utility scale modules we have, the
Are using the.
DEG21 and the NEG21, are both using that larger scale cell format. And as a result, they have the same frame dimensions as well.
Wow. Impressive that it has almost 10% more wattage on a panel the same size with slightly higher. Actually, it has almost 10% more the efficiency. That's probably why.
Yeah, well, it's also a change from kind of P-type technology, so PERC technology, to
Sure,
the
sure.
TopCon N-type,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so
That makes
yeah,
That's why. Yeah, that explains it all. Well, thank you for that summary. So when can we, as we finish, when can we expect the hail-resistant products to come and this 720-watt utility scale product or any of the other products that are not yet out in the market?
yeah. So they're all slated for Q1 of 2024 or 2025 rather. So
Yeah.
early next year, so coming soon. And the manufacturing center is not quite up and producing just yet, but we're expecting that by the end of the month here. So we'll have an
The
announcement on
Wilbur,
that
the
before too
Wilbur,
long.
the Wilbur
Yeah,
facility. Wow. So that will be active by the end of the year, by the end of
correct. Yeah.
2024. Wow,
Super
impressive.
excited about that. And yeah, just manufacturing in the US is super exciting, obviously,
Yeah.
being from the US. And the solar industry has obviously always been super kind of reliant on overseas companies and overseas manufacturing. And so having modules starting to be produced here in the US is really cool. And we're
And
really
the
excited about it.
residential hail resistant modules also coming in Q1?
Yep. Those
Yeah.
NEO9 RHs will also be Q1 of next year. And those will be assembled in the US, so coming from that Wilmer facility.
Awesome. Well, Billy, thank you very much for catching us up on the latest on Trina's product roadmap and new technologies that you guys are putting out. Thanks a lot.
For sure. Yeah, great being here. Thanks for having me.
All right. We'll continue more in the future. Thanks.